So there seems to be a lot of confusion about what an awakening is and isn't, especially with regards to Marjorie Taylor Greene. So we got to talk about it for two very important reasons. Number one being that this could open us up to some abusive patterns, abusive behaviors, and that ain't it. And number two, awakening is the era we are in. This is an ascension period. Awakenings are happening fast and furiously, and they will continue to unfold over many years. And so we're going to see the people in our lives, the terrible people in our lives too, begin the process of awakening. So we need to understand what that looks like so we can be clear-eyed and objective and also allow the process to unfold. In simplest terms, what an awakening is when you have a realization that goes contrary to your previously held beliefs. That's all it is. When you are suddenly entertaining an idea that is the opposite of that, and entertaining it makes you go, wait a minute. That's it. That's what an awakening is. Now, the implications are huge, but at the most basic point, that's what it is. And an awakening is not necessarily spiritual. It can be political. It can be cultural, sexual. There's so many ways we can have an awakening. Now, if an awakening continues and we have the proper space, the proper container, the proper support, an awakening can grow and grow and grow to become what we colloquially understand an awakening to be, which is someone who is fully enlightened and now they're totally different and they've made a radical 180 change. An awakening leads to that, but it isn't automatically that. Does that make sense? Huge distinction. But you also cannot have a full 180 about face if you don't have a true awakening. If you do not have the realization that your belief system is flawed and you want to change it and you want to grow, you're willing to grow, you're willing to be wrong, then any 180 about face is not genuine. It's not deep. It's not long lasting. It's likely just performative and temporary. So that's where we get into the distinction of what an awakening isn't, because I see a lot of people in my comments and elsewhere who are judging Marjorie Taylor for the performative awakening. Fair. And that's why we have to get into what an awakening isn't. So most importantly, an awakening is not instantaneous. Like I said, you're not instantly a totally different person. An awakening is the beginning. So if I say that person is having an awakening, what I am not saying is they're totally different. Let's trust them. I'm also not saying let's not hold them accountable for their beliefs. I'm also not saying I'm on the same team as you. Now we're besties and we're going to link arms. No. And this is why people really want to resist seeing an awakening in somebody else. Because if they think I'm saying we can automatically forgive them, you're right, that's deeply problematic. That's giving, I'm sorry I hate you, baby, here's some flowers, I'll never do it again. Like, if that person has abused you and behaved badly repeatedly, you don't have to take their apology and their awareness at face value. You don't have to make that bigger than it actually is. And you shouldn't. Because to do so would be to override your protective mechanisms. That is not the point, ever. In fact, just yesterday, I did a light circle called Resurrecting Hope. But so much about that was teaching about why we have reservations, why we don't trust, why we're skeptical. And I not only talked about those patterns, but I talked about why it's okay to be that way. You have earned that skepticism, and that person has not earned your trust. And we do not override our instincts and our protective mechanisms when we are learning to build trust. Okay, so even someone in an awakening, we don't immediately trust them or take them at their word. We step back and we watch. We don't have to rescue. We don't have to get involved. We don't have to do the work for them, and we should not do the work for them. That's on them. If you don't do your own work, you don't learn, you don't transform. So this is why I've been saying, let her cook, meaning she's in progress. She got a long way to go. But if the awakening itself is genuine and she has the proper environment, she'll get there. Let her cook. It's not your job. You don't have to trust her. You don't have to boost her up or whatever. Just watch and see what she does. Because here's the thing. I also saw a lot of people say, well, she still has the same belief. She's still this. She has ulterior motives. You can have an awakening and also still have your old beliefs and also still have ulterior motives. Because you see, awakening is different than a complete change. So let's talk about the stages of awakening. Because a true awakening, when it goes far enough, you are going to deconstruct. And if you don't deconstruct, your awakening will be stalled in the beginning stages indefinitely. So deconstructing means you get into your belief system and you start to pick apart all the little things that you once held true. It is terrifying. and awful. And anyone who's been through a deconstruction of any kind, maybe it's your marriage, maybe it's religion, maybe it's, your family, I don't know. It's awful because you're literally pulling apart the scaffolding on which your entire life stands. It is so hard. So that's why deconstruction is not phase 1 or even 2 or 3. Deconstruction is later. And myself and my spiritual awakening. So listen, part of me has always been open, not just intuitive, but I could see through a lot of bullshit out there in the world. I've always had that. And yet I was born and raised Mormon. So I was groomed and indoctrinated into a belief system since day one. And although I saw through pretty much the whole religion, a daily continual environment of that put so many things into my belief system that I didn't even recognize were there. So when I had a broader spiritual awakening in 2012, and then began to, my abilities opened up and I began to do this professionally late 2015, early 2016, I was still in the Mormon church. So I was living in a dichotomy. I was living in a contradiction. And the mental gymnastics I did for years to make it all make sense, because I wasn't yet in a place where I could not only deconstruct the religion, but I wasn't prepared to live outside of it. There's just I got to make a longer video on this because there's so much to it. But basically, I did finally formally leave the religion in 2018. I didn't fully deconstruct it. I didn't think I had to be quite honest. I was like, well, I don't believe the church. I'm comfortable leaving it. My marriage is stabilized. My life is stabilized. I don't need to deconstruct it. I have this whole other belief system going for me. So I just kept going. So it wasn't until, I think, 2022, where the bottom fell out. I had a lot going on that pushed me into deconstruction. And what I learned was that I had so many belief systems from Mormonism that I didn't realize that were from Mormonism that I had carried into my spiritual belief and thus all of my life. So when I started deconstructing that, my world completely fell apart, and that was fucking rough. So deconstruction is not the beginning. And you can have an awakening and a new phase of life without fully deconstructing. It's just two wildly different phases. And when the deconstruction really happens is when everything changes. And this is why you see a lot of spiritual people who aren't fully there. You know what I mean? There's things like toxic spirituality or bypassing or just things that are inconsistent because they haven't fully deconstructed old systems. And maybe it's not even religion. Maybe it's patriarchy. Maybe it's I don't know. There's honestly a lot of white supremacy in a lot of spiritual circles. Again, video for another day. Because if you haven't deconstructed all of the belief systems that you were raised in and understood how they unconsciously play into your belief system, you're just living your old life from a different lens. It's a higher octave, but you're not fully transformational yet. So this is why I say there's so many phases to an awakening, and it's long. You don't have to immediately trust someone on day one of an awakening, nor should you. Give them time, give them space. It's not your job to fix them. If they're really going to pursue their path of awakening, it's going to gain speed. But if you have truly awoken, it becomes incredibly hard, if not impossible, to go back to sleep. Many people do. Many people try, and their awakening stalls for a time, and they retreat back into old patterns. But if you've truly seen it, it's a lot harder to unsee it because your cognitive dissonance will keep fighting you. So that's why I say, guys, yeah, she is awakening. In progress. She has a long ass way to go. We don't have to join her side. We don't have to trust her. She can still have ulterior motives and be awakening. So step back, let her do her thing.